The Phantom's Invitation. The October wind swept through the narrow streets of Ravensgate, carrying an uneasy silence that seemed to linger. Marcus stepped onto his front porch, ready to enter the warmth of his home, when he noticed a small, aged envelope lying on the welcome mat. Its edges were frayed, the parchment yellowed, as though it had endured decades of waiting. His name was written in an elegant, swirling script that seemed to move in the flickering light. He hesitated, feeling a strange chill as he bent to pick it up. There was no return address, no postage, only a wax seal embossed with an image of a raven encircling a gate. He hesitated, fingers trembling as he broke the seal, the wax cracking under his thumb, and unfolded the letter. You are cordially invited to a Halloween celebration at Ravensgate Manor, 8 p.m. sharp. Don't be late. Marcus's pulse quickened. Ravensgate Manor had been abandoned for half a century, a charred ruin after a fire claimed dozens of guests during a masquerade ball. The event was now part of the town's ghost stories, whispered by candlelight on cold October nights. No one dared approach the ruins, believing the land cursed, haunted by the spirits of the lost masqueraders. How could anyone host a celebration in a place long destroyed? And yet, he felt an inexplicable pull, a compulsion to attend, to see for himself what lay waiting in the shadows of that hill. As night fell, Marcus dressed in a black suit and donned a simple obsidian mask, feeling like a character from one of the stories he'd grown up with, an unwitting guest stepping into a ghostly world. The town was eerily silent as he walked through the streets, his footsteps echoing on the cobblestone. Even the usual Halloween festivities seemed distant, as if the town itself sensed the presence of something lurking beyond its borders. The path to Ravensgate Manor was overgrown and twisted, winding up through a dense forest where ancient trees loomed overhead, like silent sentinels. The further he walked, the denser the mist became, clinging to his skin like cold silk. Shadows seemed to flicker at the edges of his vision, and every sound, every rustle, felt amplified, as though the forest were watching him, whispering secrets just out of reach. At the crest of the hill he stopped, his breath catching. Ravensgate Manor stood before him, restored to its former glory. Every window glowed with warm, golden light, casting an ethereal glow over the grounds. Strains of hauntingly beautiful music drifted through the air, weaving around him and drawing him forward. The massive oak doors creaked open as he approached, as if beckoning him inside. Steeling himself, Marcus crossed the threshold, stepping into a world long gone. The grand hall was immense, its marble floors gleaming beneath crystal chandeliers that hung like stars. Ornate tapestries adorned the walls, each depicting scenes of revelry, sorrow, and something darker. The figures in the fabric appeared almost alive, shifting under his gaze, trapped in an endless, silent tragedy. Masked figures filled the room, dressed in lavish, outdated attire. Some glanced his way, their gazes lingering as if he were the final piece of a puzzle. The air was thick with the scent of roses and candle wax, but beneath it lingered a faint, metallic scent, like the remnant of something scorched. "Welcome, Marcus." A voice near his shoulder made him turn. A man in a silver wolf mask inclined his head in greeting, his eyes gleaming with a knowing light. He wore a suit that seemed decades out of date, its seams fraying, the fabric oddly shimmering. "How do you know my name?" Marcus asked, his unease growing. "We know all who are invited here," the man replied smoothly. "Ravensgate chooses its guests carefully. You, Marcus, were meant to be here." "Why?" Marcus asked, feeling a prickle of fear at the back of his mind. "Why invite me?" The man only smiled. "You'll see soon enough. But beware. The night grows short, and the manor is hungry for those who tarry." Before Marcus could reply, the man gestured toward a grand staircase leading to a ballroom. "The festivities await. Do join us." Drawn by a compulsion he couldn't explain, Marcus followed, weaving through the crowd. Fragments of conversation drifted by, snippets that seemed oddly displaced in time. One voice lamented a scandal from decades past. Another spoke of wars long forgotten. The guests' laughter echoed hollowly, tinged with despair that seemed to cling to the walls like cobwebs. The ballroom was immense, its ceiling lost in shadow. Couples swirled and spun in a graceful waltz, the music weaving through the air like a ghostly hymn. He felt a shiver run through him as he realized that the dancers' movements were slightly out of sync, as if they were caught in a loop, forever repeating the same steps. As he entered, a woman in a crimson gown approached him, her mask adorned with dark peacock feathers. Her eyes glinted with a strange, knowing light. She offered her hand. "Would you care to dance, Marcus?" Her voice was soft, almost hypnotic, and he found himself taking her hand before he realized it. They moved together, her steps guiding him effortlessly across the floor. The other dancers parted around them, forming a circle as though watching a performance. "How is this possible?" he whispered, his voice barely audible over the music. "This place, it burned down." She tilted her head, a sad smile touching her lips. Ravensgate exists beyond time, caught between life and death. Tonight, the veil is thin, and the past is close enough to touch. Her grip tightened, her eyes holding his with an intensity that felt almost otherworldly. "You carry regrets, Marcus. That is why you were called here. The manor chooses only those who must confront what they cannot escape." His heart ached as memories surged within him, arguments with his father, words left unspoken, and the years of silence that had haunted him since his father's death. The weight of guilt settled over him like chains. "What do you want from me?" he asked, his voice shaking. The woman's gaze softened, her voice dropping to a whisper. "You must make peace with the past. But be warned, midnight is close, and the manor is always hungry. Not all who enter Ravensgate leave." Before he could respond, a door at the far end of the ballroom creaked open, casting a beam of pale light across the floor. The other guests grew silent, parting to create a path toward the doorway. An invisible force compelled him to follow, despite every instinct urging him to turn back. Inside, he found himself in a grand chamber, dimly lit by flickering candles. At its center stood a figure, his back turned, his posture familiar in a way that made Marcus's heart ache. "Dad?" Marcus's voice trembled as he stepped closer. The figure turned, revealing a face he hadn't seen in years. His father looked just as he had before his untimely death, his eyes somber, his features etched with sorrow and regret. "Hello, Marcus." His father's voice was soft, carrying the weight of 1,000 unsaid things. "I sent for you." A chill settled over Marcus. "You sent the invitation?" His father nodded. "I couldn't rest, knowing you carried the same burdens I once did. This place offers a chance for those who need it, but the price is steep." "I don't understand," Marcus said, his throat tight. "Are you trapped here?" "Ravensgate holds on to those who are unwilling to let go," his father replied. "We are bound by the regrets we refused to release in life. But tonight, you have a choice, a chance to free yourself." The clock in the grand hall began to chime, each toll reverberating through Marcus's body. Midnight was near, the air thickening with an oppressive sense of urgency. The candles flickered wildly, casting shadows that danced and twisted, stretching toward him like grasping hands. "Marcus," his father's voice softened. "Let go. This place preys on those who cling to what they cannot change. Release your regrets, or be bound here forever." Marcus's heart pounded as he stood on the precipice of a decision he hadn't known he would face. He could stay, finally have the time he had always wanted to reconcile with his father, or he could let go, walk away from the shadows, and leave Ravensgate behind. Tears filled his eyes as he spoke. "I forgive you, and I forgive myself. I'm sorry for everything." His father's face softened, a warm light surrounding him. "Thank you, son. Be free." The final chime echoed like a bell tolling, and the room began to dissolve. The walls crumbled, the floors gave way, and Marcus felt himself pulled backward, the world around him falling into ash and mist. He awoke on the hillside, dawn breaking over Ravensgate. The manor was gone, leaving only a skeletal ruin bathed in the first light of morning. In his hand, he clutched a silver pendant, a raven encircling a gate, the same symbol that had sealed his invitation. The weight on his heart had lifted, the shadows of the past dissipating in the dawn light. As he walked back toward town, he knew that Ravensgate would rise again next Halloween, waiting for the next soul burdened with regrets. But for him, the chapter had closed, and he was finally free to live unbound. I hope you enjoyed the short story. Like and subscribed for more. Thank you for wandering the foggy paths of Mystmoor with us. Stay curious, but beware what you may uncover in the mist. Farewell, brave souls, from Mystmoor Mysteries.